This is the DRF Players Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
Top of the stretch, Magnum Moon has taken over the lead. He's 2 lengths in front from Title Ready. Combatant splits horses. Solomini's got to go from there to the outside end. Higher Power and Magnum Moon comes to the 16th pole, and now he's 3 in front. Combatant and Solomini chase him to the wire. It is Magnum Moon, undefeated and a Rebel winner.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. This is the 319-320 edition. What I mean by that is it's show 319, and it is March 20th, 2018. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatel, not in the Brooklyn bunker, no longer in Dan Hardcore's guest room at Cheltenham. I have moved to the big city. I'm in London, South London specifically, Vauxhall at the Staybridge Inn and Suites. And folks, we've had, and we're going to give away a bingo square here, we've had some dodgy Wi-Fi on this show over the years. We are, according to the What Is My Speed website, on the dodgiest of dodgy hotel Wi-Fi. Don't be surprised if my voice turns into that of a robot at some point during the show, or we have some other dropouts and other inconveniences. But I'm sure producer Craig will make us sound like stars. And I say us because it's not just me here today. No, it's my co-host. I gave him this nickname a few weeks ago, and I'm feeling super duper guilty about it because it's clearly become some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy as he's been playing amazing in the tournament world. This is a champion we're talking about, and he keeps having good days, but not good enough to get the top prize, just enough to slide into the prize pool. Folks, he's the Baron of Breakage from Planet Texas, Jonathan Kinchin. JK, what's up?
What's up? I forgot to tell you, I don't know if you know this or not, but our friend and my business partner here in town, Robert Chow, was trying to get, he's on the upgrade list on a flight recently, and there was like 4 seats left in first, and he was 5th on the list, and he texted me and said, "I'm the Baron of Breakage."
I had it last night, actually. We went to the theater here in London. It was actually yesterday morning. They do an amazing concept here called day tickets, right? And it's for typically students take advantage of it, but it's unbelievable. Even the hottest shows in town, in many instances, and this is definitely the case at the National Theater where I was yesterday. You can show up in the morning. Technically, they go on sale at 9:30. I showed up at 8. There was already a line of people. We were looking to get into see Network with Bryan Cranston, which is, big hit at the National Theater right now for a limited run. Secondary market tickets going for something insane like £400 a ticket. So I decided as a special gesture to Susan, and also just because I want to see it, I would get there early. And these tickets, they're going for $400. They had a limited amount of tickets going for 15 quid. And sure enough, the last 15 quid ticket sold to the person right before me in line. So I can relate to you guys. Fortunately,
that's what you get.
Yeah, they had some full price ones we were able to pay for. Still did considerably better than the 400 quid. Let's put it that way. Show was amazing. If we have London listeners who haven't seen the show, or folks who are going to be over during this limited run with Cranston doing the role, the Peter Finch role from the film, I highly recommend going to see Network. And I would say, just to be sure, I'd rock over there about 7:30 in the morning to the National Theater and try to get that done. Speaking of getting up early, JK, thank you so much for doing this. We're recording early today, and that means you getting out of bed early. I guess you really do love me.
No, I do that without a doubt, and I can guarantee you that there's going to be a mute mistake here because I'm still a little cloudy. I have a feeling I'm gonna be, and I'm also in the mornings as a lifelong asthmatic. I'm a little allergy-ish from time to time, and so the mornings are usually when I hit my 3 sneezes in a row. It's the weirdest thing. I sneeze like 3 times, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And so the mute button will be needed to avoid the sneeze going through the airwaves. But I guarantee I'll probably make a mistake with the snooze button. So, the sleep button. So don't get mad at me. Give me
snooze button. That was a Freudian slip. You wish you were still in bed, but you wake up because you love me and you love the fans, which is great. We also are, I would put the odds at about, we're in the UK, so I'll use their odds. We're about 4 to 6 that the cleaning lady, the maid, housekeeper, whatever you want to call her, or perhaps him, is going to be knocking on the door during the show. I'm not going to mute. I'm going to leave my conversation with that person so everyone can enjoy that in the background when that eventuality occurs. All right, enough nonsense. At the top of the show, we heard the stretch run call of the Rebel Stakes from Arkansas. I know that was a tough beat for you, JK, needing Combatant to get up into second to win yourself all kinds of fun and exciting stuff on DRF tournaments. But put your own involvement inside for a minute. What did you think of the race? Specifically, what did you think of the winner's performance, Magnum Moon clocking in with a 97 Beyer speed figure in the Rebel at Arkansas?
It's funny, like, you know, in contests, there's a lot of horses where I look at the race, I see a trip note or something on a horse, or it's a horse that I've been waiting to come back, and I honestly will, like, glance at the rest of the race, and then I don't even really look much deeper because I know no matter what happens, I am going to use that horse. And this is honestly one of those situations. I was in Nashville. Me and my son went to go watch the Texas game on Friday for the first round of 64 for the NCAA tournament. And so I was on the fly. I was running around, and I wasn't really playing much parimutually. I was just playing contests. So I knew that I was going to take Combatant. I've been waiting for the horse to come back, and I didn't really look much further than that. And so when Magnum Moon won, I was a little bit agitated because I used a 4 to 5 shot earlier in the day, which we talk about the power of $4 all the time at Gulfstream, a filly that, of course, it's 6:08 a.m. for me. I'm going to forget the name. A filly that was working with Magnum Moon, a Todd Pletcher filly that he had just gotten that ran in the inside information. So he'd got the filly, and she had been working. And one of my favorite things that I picked up from Duke Matisse is when you're looking at that workout report is that you look at who they're working with to see the kind of figures they're running. And one of the horses that she had worked with head and head was Magnum Moon. And so I Googled Magnum Moon, or not Googled, but looked up Magnum Moon's figure and saw the number. And I was like, oh, wow, this filly can really run. She's running with this really nice horse. And then I don't play the really nice horse in the race. But like I said, it's one of those situations where it doesn't matter. I knew I was going to play Combatant no matter what. And with that said, I thought Combatant ran really well. Like he to be honest, even though I was wrong in the race, I feel semi-smart. I was right about betting against Solomini, who really didn't have much of an excuse, if you ask me. And then Combatant was exactly like I kind of drew it up. I thought he was going to come running and feels a lot like Creator. And there'll be some value there next time because a horse I'm sure we'll talk about later in the show. We got a really interesting question on Twitter. Seems to be pointing towards the Arkansas Derby, and Magnum Moon and Justify. When those horses hook up, it could get interesting for Combatant late.
Oh, that's very interesting. Couple of other things on this race. One, let's talk about the ride on Solomini. We had a question come in about that from Jim O'Neill, who says he thought he should not have gone to the rail. Curious to get your thoughts on the ride on Solomini and give us your assessment of Solomini going forward.
I guess, Mike, I'm going to answer a question with a question, which is my favorite thing that people do, especially people. Yeah, never mind. What was problematic about him going to the rail? I mean, like I said, I wasn't fully involved. Was the rail not good yet that day, or
I don't know. Just a question that came in for the transom, and to be perfectly honest, I was doing ATR stateside over here. My friends at the races, the TV channel, as opposed to the radio show in the USA. And Oaklawn wasn't one of the tracks we were covering, so I didn't watch a race from Oaklawn live on the night.
Well, here's what I'll say. I don't have a problem ever with someone going down to the inside to save ground, especially when...
Ever?
As long as there's not
right.
a dead rail. And And Title Ready, the horse for Charles Fipke, that horse was down inside a majority of the time and still ran well from down there. I think finished fourth. I don't have a problem with Solomini going down inside. To be honest, he got a pretty clean trip. He saved a lot of ground. I'm more concerned with the fact that he was on his wrong lead the entire stretch. But he still held off Combatant who wasn't on the wrong lead. So, I mean, I thought he ran okay considering. I don't see his going down to the inside being too problematic.
He doesn't feel like one. He doesn't feel like one who you want going forward, though, Solomini, does he?
No, I mean, but I didn't really want him here. But no, he definitely doesn't feel like one you want going forward. It's weird because in a normal year, it just be like, oh, it's a Baffert. He can improve. He's battle tested to have made it this far. He's a Grade 1 winner, although it's via disqualification. He ran second to Boldoro and all these things, but I'm not really sure. I see a great opportunity for him to improve. And after while we're talking, after kind of watching it again, I mean, where else was he going to go? He was sat behind a wall of 4 across the track, inside in the pocket. I mean, if I had bet on the horse, I wouldn't have asked for another trip.
Gotcha. Just not good enough on the day. Magnum Moon was, and this horse puts another horse in the talk of Kentucky Derby, top of the market, who did not have a start at age 2. I don't know, JK. I wonder what kind of number I could get from somebody just on the curse of Apollo falling this year. I'd have to take a close look and see exactly who'd be running for me beyond the top 2, justify in this horse. But I'm just sort of getting the vibe that this is the year that one's going to fall.
Should have called Marv back a couple months ago and had him ask Johnny at the win if he could have given you a line. So
it is the kind of bet I would have made a couple months ago. Obviously, at a much bigger number now that we know who the bullets who the bullets in the holster are. But I don't need to get Marv right now. I'm in a civilized country when it comes to attitudes about betting. I can walk down the street and bet who I want for the Kentucky Derby. And in fact, let's do that as an exercise on this show before the show's over, maybe even before the end of this conversation. Let's go to Odds Checker and let's take a look. And I'll put down 100 for me and 100 for you, and we'll legally bet this stuff, and we'll each have a little future. What do you say?
Yeah, I can get down with that. Now, is there bookmakers or betting houses that you can or that you can go to and like ask them to make you a line for something that you want to bet, or can you only really bet what's on the board?
I think you can bet what's on the board, but because of Odds Checker, we'll know. We can see what the price is at the bookie I'm going to, and I can walk in and ask for that price.
No, I'm curious. Like if you could, next, I guess maybe next summer we could say, hey, can you give us a price on the Apollo curse being broken in the 2019 Kentucky Derby?
There might be some way of doing that. I know you can certainly do that in Las Vegas, so I don't exactly see why you couldn't here, except for the fact that I think these guys, if we come in with American accents asking that question, like the last thing they're going to want to do is lay us a bet. But perhaps there's a clever way to do it.
Well, the easy way to solve it is I'll come with you. I've got a phenomenal British accent.
I want to hear that, and I want to hear your vocal warm-up to get you out of the morning asthmatic googliness. I've heard some sounds come out of you, JK, that they just don't seem like they should exist in nature, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Yeah, I scratched my throat, and my son, he told me there, he said, Dad, you've got to stop.
When you're getting those etiquette tips from the 6-year-old, you've done something wrong in your life. Before we leave this race, JK, I did want to talk about one strategy thing, and then I'll ask you if you have a final thought on the race. But the first question I want to ask you, I noticed you played 2 entries on DRF tournaments. one of the contests was amazing, like really tight at the end. 5 players in a 10-runner field within $3 of each other. And I did notice that you were double combatant at the end. Is that the type of, you weren't saying you wish you'd gotten off combatant to play the winner so much as you could have split between the two? I want you to talk about your general philosophy with the specifically the last leg in contest, when you have to put the picks in beforehand, and talk about this decision a little more. And I think some people will be surprised to hear that you'll get so wedded to a horse before actually doing the work on a race. And I'm assuming that's something you're only talking about doing in contests, in contests where you just pick one horse, as opposed to vertical or horizontal betting through the windows.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a contest thing, right? It's like the first thing we talked about after the Southwest was Kent's hilarious interview after he won on My Boy Jack. We talked about how great the rail was that day and how I couldn't wait to bet combatant back. So it's like that was the first thing I said even before I even looked at the PPs and saw the figure and saw the blah, 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 and even watched the race again probably. And so when they show back up and the horse is 8-1, you got Todd, who's going to be bet a little bit more than he probably should be. Solomini's going to take all that money. It was just like a no-brainer. Like at that point of the day, that's who I wanted to be alive to. And part of my tournament strategies I've been trying to improve upon is I've very often played with 2 entries. And in the past, I used to do a lot of kind of spreading, and I realized it was more of a hoping strategy. And I don't like to do things in betting that are hoping. I like to do what I think is going to happen with a strong opinion. And so when that type of horse comes back, in a all-in setting, I'm going to use them on both because if I'm playing an all-in with 2 entries, I want them to resemble one another more often than not. I'd like for 60 or 70% to be the same picks. And then to spread in the other races. And so if I was playing in a live situation and I dove back into the PPs, could I have found Magnum Moon? Maybe. It would have been a great thing to be able to do at that point because, I had played well enough at that point to have both. I think I had both entries that were kind of in contention-ish. And he ran third. And funny enough, if him running second that
would have been enough.
I wouldn't have Cheryl McIntyre still beat me?
I don't think so. I think you get there.
Because she had Magnum Moon.
She had Magnum Moon, so her points wouldn't change, and you would have gotten $6 more, and you finished like $5 behind her.
Tell me more about myself. I appreciate this. I like.
You're saying. That's the way I wrote it in the article. I took great pains in the article to make it sound like you'd screwed up. So, I didn't do that actually. But I did look at it very closely because I wrote about it just because it was such a bunched up and interesting finish. And yeah, combatant passes Solomini, you win.
Really?
I'm almost sure. You take a look and tell me what you think. But
I'm looking.
I'm pretty sure about that. If not, I can correct the article. But
at the bottom it'll say the bottom it'll be one of those things where. In a previous article, Pete Fornatale made a mistake because of his love for Jonathan Kenton. Let's see. So Magnum Moon, she picked up $11.
That doesn't change. Where did you finish? How far back were you from her? I can't believe we're doing this to the listeners, by the way, but let's do it very quickly, and then we'll move on.
$4.
So you got 0, she got 11. Magnum Moon still wins, she still gets 11. All you need is combatant to play $4 to place, which obviously would have happened, and then you're good.
Makes me very angry, Pete. I was hey, you know what though? We haven't talked. I will tell you this real fast. This is actually a funny story. Do you know where I was when that race went off?
I do not.
I was in an Uber from Nashville to Memphis.
Who takes an Uber from Nashville to Memphis? Don't you fly for free or something?
Yeah, but that's the problem. We're on that standby life, and for whatever reason, there's a million people at the Nashville airport flying standby.
Oh, no?
Yeah, my mom said the same thing. That's not what happened, but we won't go down that rabbit hole. But so anyway, yeah, so it wasn't that. It was just like family travel. Spring break was over. People were trying to redirect, and they ended up redirecting to Nashville. Long story short, $218 Uber for a 3-hour ride to Memphis. Met up with our friend Marshall Graham and Clay Sanders and had dinner and then flew out the next morning. So,
barbecue, or do you as a Texan not eat the Memphis barbecue?
Yeah, that's against my religion.
Well, it was a very interesting race. We have a new contender for sure on the Derby Trail. Let's look at some of these prices and see if we can come up with a couple of bets. It's tough though, man. I mean, it's pretty tight. There's not much in the way of fat. We'll start with we'll do. Do you have a particular long shot you're interested in? The other way I'd be tempted to do this is just look at things that are 20-1 and under. But in truth, it might be wiser to try to take a stab with something at the higher range. But just to roll through it quickly, looking at the screen here on Odds Checker, Bull Doro at the top of the market. The best price I'm seeing there is 8-1. There's some 11-1 on McKinsey, some 12-1 on Audible. Justify, who the other night on TV when we were talking, there was some 16 around. Unfortunately, the best you're going to see right now is 14. I'd like that better at 16, but I still might be tempted to do it. Good Magic hasn't gone out past 16. Magnum Moon, a big-time move in the market, also 16. Mask is still listed. That's not a wise bet. Promises Fulfilled at 20. Solomini, the best price is 20. Who else do you want to know about?
You've already said one that I'd be interested in wagering in now, but let's keep it moving just for a second. Combatant.
Let's see if we can find a price on Combatant. There's some 40-1. Does that do anything for you?
Yeah, I think that I would if you're gonna spend $100, I would think like a $70 on I'll go ahead and say who I want to Justify, and I'll explain why. And 70 on Justify, 30 on Combatant, and if you can have two of those things live going into the gate with a way to get out to pay for your wagers, it's two horses that you can kind of eliminate from some of your, not eliminate from your play, but you could have a nice live little situation. Here's the thing with Justify is if he shows up, and I know that this is a little bit weird, but if he shows up to the Arkansas Derby and he wins by 4, he's going to be significantly shorter than 14 on the day.
Yeah, he's going to be 4-1, isn't he? I mean, it seems like a year where there isn't going to be anybody shorter than around there, but I guess it all depends on what happens with both Doro and McKinsey next time. Yeah,
but Justify with the 3 triple-digit buyers in a row, and what I would imagine, I've never heard anyone say he's not a good-looking horse. He's obviously talented as ever. He's obviously well-bred. And he's going to show up at Churchill, and I guarantee he's going to get that, oh, my gosh, he's working like a freak thing. And I think if he wins the Arkansas Derby, I think he'll be bet. So I think there's value there. If you can get 14-1 at this point after we kind of already know what he is.
All right, I'll go to Coral today. I'll take us the 14s, and we'll throw a little Combatant in there too. Just trying to take a quick look down the line here if there's anything else that excites. Catholic Boy at 33. I wouldn't say no if you wanted to give me the bet, but I'm not like going to cut in line for that one. There is a little 50 on Free Drop Billy from a book that I'm not familiar with. What about that one? 50 on Free Drop Billy, keeping in mind that you could also do it each way, where you get a quarter of the odds if the horse finishes in the top 3.
I mean, I think that's a real interesting play, especially with we've talked about how big of a fan I am of Dale Romans when it comes to Churchill Downs and the Kentucky Derby. So he's definitely one, and he's been showing his ability since he was a 2-year-old. So he's definitely one that I would consider getting to, especially at that price. Yeah, I wonder what he'll be on the day, though, right? I mean, is he has enough to qualify already, right? I mean, when it comes to Derby points. I'm looking while we're talking. I would think he does too, because he won the Grade 1 at Keeneland, right?
Yeah, but that's the 2-year-old stuff is weighted down. But then he had the second. I think he's going to get in.
Yeah, but I'm saying he still gets it. He's still he still gets some points so that like these thirds, or a third or something in his next prep really helps him.
Yeah, I think the interesting, in a funny contrarian way, the interesting play here is
12th.
the horse 12th. Okay,
yeah,
so not guaranteed, but looks pretty good. The interesting play here is more the take the horse in the mid-teens who you think's going to win the next prep or at least run second, and the odds are going to have, and you put your value in that way. That feels right to me, and I like those too. I'm into that. I'll walk. It'll give me an excuse to go into a bookie shop, which is always entertaining for us Americans.
Can you take a kid into a bookie shop?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer. I never did try to take Perrin. There was one on the corner when we were living in Islington. I never did go there with her. I would just sort of run in to make a couple of bets before the football match or whatever, soccer match or whatever. So I did not try to do that. It doesn't feel like it would be cool, but I don't know.
Oh, it feels like it would be really cool.
It all depends on how you look at the world.
We're in the Uber. And Austin's holding my phone because he's playing games and stuff. And I say, hey, well, bud, let's watch. I gotta watch this race real fast. So I turn the race on, and he kind of grabs my phone like he wants to hold it. I'm not gonna snatch it back from him and be like, no, let me watch it. So I kind of let him hold the phone, and he kind of started giving me a race call.
Ooh, interesting.
He goes, okay, Dad. The number 1 horse, he went to the front, and they're going into the first turn. He's like, oh, Dad, the number 7 horse, he's way back there. And I said, buddy, they're going around 2 times. Calm down. So it was funny. He gave me a little play-by-play. Travis Stone would have been very proud.
I was going to say, Uncle Travis might need to take him under the wing there, and we might have to work on this. I have had the idea that parents already shown an interest in things broadcasting, microphones, obvious interest in horse racing, that she could be the I'm not sure if there's ever been a full-time, long-term female race caller. I've held in mind the idea that Uncle Travis might have to help her. Now maybe we can get a 2-for-1 rate on tutelage for the next generation. What do you think?
I wonder if there's ever been 2 people call a race at once where they kind of went did a back and forth.
Oh, they do. That's
they
very
do it in
common
England, right?
Europe. Yeah,
right.
Super common, and France as well. But between the size of the field and the lengths of the races, it makes more sense. It would actually make a little bit of sense for a race like the Derby, but it's just not our tradition. That's a great question the next time we talk to one of our race caller friends to ask them what a USA race caller would think of that, if it would be anathema to them to share that situation, or if they'd view it as, hey, wow, yeah, I get to do half as much. Maybe that's a positive, maybe it's a negative.
Speaking of race calls, I tweeted a piece of a race call, and it's easily become my most popular tweet of all time.
You're really going here? They may take us off the air for real this time, JK, with you telling this story.
Well, I'm not telling the story. I'm just telling a story about a beautiful quarter horse race that happened at Remington. It was nothing derogatory going on here. I just a horse. It was a photo finish. Very interesting race. I can't remember the horse's name. You'll have to go to my Twitter. You'll have to go to my. It's that's par for the course. We never can remember the horse's name, so no one can get
give out a bingo
that.
Square and keep us on the air. I like where you're going with this.
Yeah, just go check out my Twitter page and just watch a great photo.
It was a very tight race. I will say this. I feel for the people, and I guess it's a different entity that does this for quarter horses, but you feel for the Jockey Club and people who try to sneak names by them, and sometimes the Jockey Club makes, I think, bad decisions in blocking names that there's no reason should be blocked. However, there are some that just, I guess, slip through the cracks, or they just don't understand the mean things certain owners are trying to do to race callers. I think it was a filly. Was it a Caesar Kimmel, who I think recently passed away, filly called, I got to be careful when I say it here, Cunning Stunt, that he made that name just to provoke and call it. But that fall through like this one, that I feel like anyone would see the name once and say, no. But anyway, if you're curious for more, I will say this. It begins with BOFA, BOFA. But go to JK's Twitter feed if you want to see more about that. We got a ton of questions here, Jonathan. You up for answering some stuff from the listeners?
Yeah, there's one I'm excited about. So I just think it'll be fun. It's going to be a really fun conversation. So let's dive in.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to start off. We were asked to comment on a weird one, and I don't want to ignore it. But this story that Jay Privman posted that was updated yesterday about Peter Miller being fined and suspended for insulting language. Did you read this story?
I did read it, yeah.
It was kind of disturbing. The ruling said it was the 7th offense for Miller for disorderly conduct related to aggressive, abusive behavior. And our take was asked for. Now, I will say this about Miller. I don't know him personally. Never met the man. Certainly been a fan of betting on his horses, especially early in the Del Mar meet for, going on a decade now. So, I mean, personally, I have, warm feelings in a pari-mutuel sense. Obviously, he was at the center of the San Luis Rey thing, and at the Eclipse Awards did a very admirable job of portraying some of the emotion that went into that whole thing. But this is also a guy, I did once read an article where he was bragging about how he put a horse over, which is pretty dodgy to begin with, and then as a second non-humble brag in the article, talked about how he was so sneaky that even his father wasn't in on the put over. That did make me wonder about what kind of guy we were dealing with here. That's all I really have to say on the matter.
Yeah, what's funny is and this really isn't like an attempt for me to like bring up the coaching thing, but when I coached, there was a lot of really nice men that I used to work with that in the heat of battle and in the heat of a moment, their passion got out of control.
Interesting.
And they weren't bad people. They were sweet, caring, loving, men who respected women and respected, people in general. And in the heat of the battle, they would absolutely lose control and become inappropriate with their language or their tone or their aggressiveness. And I don't know Peter Miller the same that you don't. I don't want to downplay his offenses or alleged offenses or whatever he did or whatever he didn't do or whatever. I'm just saying that sometimes people need to find strategies to be able to handle some of those positive traits that they do have. I mean, I would imagine that his passion and his enthusiasm for the game are part of the reason why him and his staff acted so heroically in handling the situation at San Luis Rey. However, it seems as if possibly his intensity and his competitiveness potentially get the best of him in these situations, and he might need to address those situations to improve upon them. Like I'm not going to condemn the guy because he's made some mistakes. I try not to do that. I try to give people second chances. I make mistakes all the time, so I don't know a lot about it, but it sounds like it could be something that goes down that same path of what I've seen from coaches. I mean, I've been around guys that actually like they almost black out. Like they almost black out, and like you tell them like, "Hey, coach, you did you hear what you said last night?" And they have no idea they even said it.
That's
and
interesting.
So, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that hopefully that's kind of what happened here, and hopefully he'll take some steps to try to get those things rectified.
Yeah, it's interesting. His comments were, there was sort of a sorry, not sorry going on in some of the stuff in Jay's article, which I recommend that everybody check out on DRF.com. But it just seems like when you have these kind of incidents happen more than once, if you're serious about trying to be the best person you can be and to play nicely with others and not get yourself in further hot water, yeah, I mean, like an anger management class is probably hello in terms of getting the ship righted in this. The guy's obviously got a lot of talent, and I don't think. Look, I mean, this is me here talking about California stewards. I'd love to come here and grind my own axe about how much I don't like some of their decisions in races and say it's a witch hunt and they're trying to embarrass him and he's really just a great guy, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't feel like the case here. This feels like something that does need to be addressed. And, hopefully he can be adult enough to see beyond whatever his perception of them trying to embarrass him is and get the help he needs and go on with life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hopefully that's, it's funny when I first heard about it, not to get way too, this is kind of a deep thought, but when I first heard, the first thing that popped in my head was that awesome video of him and his two kids that was on TVG a couple of years back rooting a horse home together. And I thought to myself, like, man, like that's, if this is a situation that he's dealing with, I sure hope that like his kids don't ever have to like see that happen. Like they're back to the barn and like they see him kind of caught in that moment of excitement and aggression and competitiveness, and it comes out and he's setting that example. That was what popped in my head was like his kids and seeing that he was like a loving father and engaging with his family with work. And I would just, hopefully he can. This is a kind of a wake up call and he can get those things sorted out.
I like that sentiment very much. We got one from Ruben about a Derby question. He was just going from memory here, but he says from the Giacomo Derby to the present, feels like the 3-year-old crop Beyer speed figure pre-Derby and even in the Derby have dropped off several points on average. Do we think that's right? Why do we think that might be? I feel bad. I didn't pull the actual data, but we'll just spitball it.
This would be a great question for Craig Milkowski or Paul Matisse. But my initial thought is that technology is improving. There's more figures out there to check the main figure that's published, obviously the Beyer. And I think what happens is that we're becoming more accurate, and therefore the numbers are starting to kind of be reined in a bit. I don't think that horses are running slower.
Doesn't make logical sense to me that horses would be running slower. If you look at every other athletic pursuit, times get, it's confusing, I guess, because we're talking times and we're talking figures. Times, obviously, people have asked, well, why haven't, if horses are getting faster the way people have, why haven't the track record or the stakes record in a race like the Derby fallen? And to me, that one's pretty obvious, and it has to do with the way surfaces are maintained. And because of the way surfaces are maintained, we're always going to want to be looking in horse racing at figures to judge speed as opposed to raw times. So, yeah, I think we put a pin in this one. I like your hypothesis, JK. I think we put a pin in this one. Maybe ask it to Paul on your message board, or Craig is a listener. Craig, if you're listening and you cared to share a thought or come on and yap with us, I definitely want to get Craig's thoughts on the 3-year-old crop in general. And this might be a good add-on conversation for, obviously it's going to be pretty much, Derby from here till the first Saturday in May. So maybe we'll add this for discussion later, unless you have another thought on it for now.
Yeah, just the other thing that could potentially be is that with the focus on safety and integrity, the NTRA has that Safety and Integrity Alliance, and then the racetracks being the focus of attention when it comes to having a safe and fair racetrack. I think maybe the racetracks have slowed down a little bit.
Well, I think that's definitely right, but the figure in theory should adjust for that.
Agreed.
So, ipso facto, but we'll see. We have another Derby question. This one came over Twitter for you, JK, but I happened to see it and grab it. I didn't even see this tweet of yours. It says, apropos of your tweet about Justify's possible pace in the Derby, and because he wanted to procrastinate at work, he made this spreadsheet about horses in the Derby and how fast they go. His big takeaway from it, and I think this is certainly partially true, at least, he says if you want to win, don't go too fast. So start by sharing what your tweet was about Justify and the Derby pace, and then I hope you had a chance to look at that chart. I'd love to hear any comments you have on it.
someone asked going 23 and 46 or 22 and 46 or 23 and 47, and I said I thought 22 and 46.
I'll take the other side of that argument.
The faster of the two. I don't remember exactly what the question was, but
so I think
I said the faster
question. I think a much better question is: would you rather him go? I don't know about better question, but I think it gets at the heart of the matter. Do you want to see 22 and change and 46, or do you want to see 24 and 4 and 49? You know, because then I'd slide to your way of thinking. But to me, if the two options are both fast and one is a little slower, as long as it becomes a truly run race, that's what we want to see. Again, it gets back to this idea of running efficiency. We saw a great example of this at Cheltenham last week in the Stayers Hurdle, which is obviously the distance hurdle race. And there was a really good, well-fancied front runner who I backed who went comically slow. Dan Hardcore and I watched it side by side against the handicap on the same card at the same distance, and it was ludicrous how much slower they were going in the better race. And that was a case to me of you're going so slow, you're a front runner, you cannot, you simply are giving away your weapon. You're letting horses who don't necessarily want to stay have a chance. You're de facto making a 3 mile, I'm just making up numbers here, but a 3 mile race into a 2.5 or even 2 mile race, and you're changing the type of horses that can win. Now, similar dynamic in a way in a race like the Kentucky Derby, where you've got, there's a lot of horses who the stamina is in question. To me, when you go ridiculously slow, like in my example of the 24 and change, 49 and change, or whatever I said, like that's a case where you're going to bring horses that only want to run a mile, still kind of only having to run a mile. If you can work out a trip, you're going to be able to, in my opinion, have more finish, even if you're not really a mile and a quarter horse. However, to me, if you're talking about 22 flat 46. I think that's probably, and it obviously all depends on the day and pace figures and things like that. But as that chart indicates, that feels too fast to me. To me, what you're really looking for in these situations is efficiency on the fast side. And I say on the fast side because you're talking about grade 1 horses set to run a peak effort. So, it's you don't want to go too slow. You don't want to go too fast. You want to go just right. And it feels to me from here like that might be quite possible for the front runner in this year's Derby. Do you have anything to argue with in that?
Yeah, my thought on it is that, and this is probably the best way to explain it in the most precise way. I want the freaks to run as fast as they possibly can. Bodemeister, American Pharaoh, what appears to be we have with Justify. I want the freaks to go on with it. Promises fulfilled, strike power. Those horses are horses that I feel like you want them to go 49 to the half because they're good front running horses, but they're not freaky, right? So I want them to be that horse that kind of gets that they just kind of coast along, save some energy, and try to quicken home. And that's your best chance of winning. But the freaks, the Justifies, the 2 triple-digit buyers in their first 2 starts, the Twitter blows up when they run type of horses, I want those horses to just gut the rest of the field, similar to what happened with Bodemeister. I mean, he flew early in that race, and if without the presence of Triniberg, he probably slows down maybe just a taste. Or at least is a little bit more relaxed and not having to look at another horse in the process of doing it, and he wins that Kentucky Derby. But that's kind of my thought. It's not a blanket idea that I want my horse to run fast in the Derby. I want the freaky ones to run fast, and I want the talented, good, nice 3-year-old front running horses to go 49 to the half. But the freaky ones, I want them to go 46.
To me, it depends on what kind of finish a horse has. Also, if it's a horse who can finish. There are some front runners who just gut and hang on, and you see it in their pace figures. And that's a little bit different than the horse that has finish but is still fast enough to make the lead, like that example we always talk about from Travers Day. If you're a horse who's more of a closer and is in this by the moon situation where the lead can be made, in that case, if you're all about your finish is your weapon, go as slow as you want. So I think it really depends, and I think the missing component in the way you described it, JK, is like looking at how the horses are able to finish and using that as a bit of a determining factor. And my fear about even a freak going too fast is that it'll take that a horse like Justified has shown the ability to finish, and I worry that going too fast, it could take some of the sting out of that finish, which I would argue is what happened with Bodemeister. To me, the key thing you said when you used the Bodemeister Triniberg example was if Triniberg wasn't in the race, like, the 2 ticks, 3 ticks, whatever it is, slower he can go, more he can relax, like, it's still going to be a fast pace, but then he's going to be able to find the finish to actually win the race instead of getting, tagged late.
Yeah, no, and I think the word freak, right, is like the definition of freak to me is like one that can go really fast early and still finish more than you would expect a horse that went that fast early to finish. And that's kind of, and so that's why I feel as if I would want Justify out there winging it, because, it's the Dale Romans thing that I heard a long time ago. When you're going fast up front, the horses behind you are going faster than they want to go to. So you're dulling their late kick. You're dulling their ability to run you down in the stretch, and you're kind of sticking it to them. And I think that offensive attack is probably the best defense when you're turning from home at the quarter pole, is that you've taken starch out of the horses that are behind you, and you happen to be that quote unquote freaky type who can still kind of pick up the bit and finish home after going 46 to the half in a 1.25 mile race.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that example that Romans gives is correct sometimes, but, far from all the time. There's also plenty of times where you just get a brilliantly timed ride by a patient rider who understands pace, understands they're going too fast, is still in the position they'd normally be in. Again, to me, it all comes down to looking at the horse's individual pace figures early and late and just sort of doing that race design game of positioning them in the race. The Derby, it's changed so much, and we say this every year, but it's always worth noting that we had a question about this too, but I didn't find it when I went to look through. It's just such a major difference with those sprinters, the Trinibergs of the world, not being eligible for the race anymore. The point system and the change to, 3-year-old form in these points races really mattering. And you basically you can't just be a sprinter with graded stakes earnings anymore. It makes the Derby, instead of being this race that was often too quickly run, setting up for the likes of Giacomo and even Mind That Bird, I think those kind of results are going to be harder to find. And I don't think it's an accident that we've had the top of the market dominate as much, because the best dirt horses are going to be ones with tactical speed. They're going to be ones now who are in a position to control the race, instead of being in really perilous positions in past years where jockeys, so many examples of the best horse famously moving too early, dealing with a hotter pace because of those sprinters. I'm thinking of Point Given. I'm thinking of a Fleet Alex. I think it's a lot easier now for the jockeys on the best horses in the Derby. I do not think it's at all a coincidence that the point system and that change has coincided directly with the Derby being this formful race. You got to remember, JK, when I got into the game mid-90s, and then throughout that first several years of I was attending the Derby regularly then, like the favorite hadn't won. I wish I knew the exact number, but it was almost like the favorite hadn't won in 20 years. And we've gone from that to, an awful lot of chalk in recent years. Are you with me on this? Do you see it any differently?
No, I actually completely agree. I think that it's definitely it's changed the way that race is run, and I think it's okay. I'm okay.
Do you like it or not?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I mean, I think that it would be nice if there was like one sprinter in there to kind of keep it interesting. But at the same time, I don't like the idea of like the Trinity thing to me. I don't.
Right. I mean, I think everybody would agree that the best horse didn't win, right? I mean, Bodie.
Well, it depends. I guess ask me every year before they load which horse I bet on. If I bet on a closer, which doesn't typically happen, then I think that there should be sprinters in the race, for crying out loud.
But the reason I think you'd like it is more of your handicapping style of picking logical horses that you really see winning the race. What was interesting from a contest player's point of view anyway about the other way of doing it was it's going to make a lot more 20-to-1 plus shots live, and and a lot of players like to make educated guesses about 20-to-1 plus shots. You and I are not really that type of player generally. And so I think that's probably why we don't mind it as much as I bet there are some contest types who detest it.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a lot of guys who love taking closers that would enjoy it. Our friend Nick Tamro, one of my favorite things he does, I know you'll recognize this one. When they break from the gate, he goes faster.
when he's got the closer. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've touched on tournaments a little bit. We have a tournament question. Hey, Jonathan. This one's from @handy_capper, which made me laugh for some reason. Hey, Jonathan, I was wondering if in the tournament scene there was a bankroll idea of how many buy-ins you should have per level. Like for certain tournaments, that cost $1, I'm starting with $30. How much should I win before jumping up to a $2 tournament, for example? And you kind of punted the question on Twitter, right?
I did. This is more of a PTF one. Like this is too much math. I don't want to give away any bingo squares.
You don't want to try math and fail?
Yeah, it's funny if you I looked at my DRF tournaments thing the other day. To be honest, this is the answer to the question. Of all the contests I've played on DRF tournaments, I think my win rate, from what I've won and what I've played is like 33%, 34%, something like that. So, I mean, I guess that's what the answer is you want to have enough that you can withstand that, right?
Yeah, you want to have enough that you can withstand a streak of losing. A lot of this matters. Most people do this by feel, I think, in the beginning. But I think it's a really smart and good sign to be thinking about the world in these terms. Because people talk about that in cash betting all the time. If you've got $1,000 bankroll, what should your bet size be? And again, right away we have to say, wait a second, okay, so this $1,000 bankroll, is that like you spend it and you're done for the year? You got to make it last the whole year? Because then I might say your bet size should be $20. If it's $1,000 bankroll, but it's like if it goes away, you can then find a way to get some more and stay in action and bip to the bip. I'd say you could probably get away with betting 50 on that $1,000 bankroll, though that would be probably too much if it was money that you really, really needed. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it depends on what the money and the action mean to you. But my goal in tournaments would be to just have a level of success at a certain level before moving up to another level. I mean, I think I don't have a specific mathematical formula for it. I'd more just say it's a question of the concept Mike Maloney talks about so much in Betting with an Edge, where you earn the right to move up. So, obviously, if your bankroll is going south, you're not going to move up. But I wouldn't need a whole lot of success to start moving up as long as I was doing it incrementally. I wouldn't want to go from the $500 Wood Memorial Day contest to the $5,000 World Horse Players Tour Santa Anita Preakness contest. If 500 to 5,000, I wouldn't want to do that based on, just a little bit of success. But I think that once you get comfortable at a certain level, it doesn't take all that much to just start building gradually. Does that answer make any sense?
Yeah, and I think the other thing to keep in mind is like what ratio games are you playing? Are you playing 1 in 5s? Are you playing 1 in 10s?
Well, that's
are
a
you
great
playing
point.
1 in 30s, right? Because obviously you're going to win the 1 in 5s a lot more than you're going to win the 1 in 10s. You're going to win those more than you're going to win the 1 in 30s. So, and you're going to win those a heck of a lot more than you're going to win the senseless 1 in 75s or whatever. So you have
Shots
to,
fired.
You have to evaluate what game it is that you're playing. If you're just playing matchups, I mean, you know, you can. I mean, I went back and forth with the same guy this weekend. Like I stuck it to him on Saturday, and then he stuck it back to me on Sunday. Great days of action, and you know, what I lost the juice there. So
Yeah,
with
you
the
lose the
bankroll
rake.
not being affected. So it just depends on the game selection as well.
Let's talk through a quick example. You got $500. You're starting out in $50 matchup contests. Okay. At what point? So in other words, you know, you should be winning. In theory, you should be winning every other one. At what point would you want to move up from 50 to 100? I mean, my gut just tells me you look at the rate. You know, you double your money, you move up. Is what pops into my head. Does that sound about right? And which of those contests are you playing in on DRFT?
Yeah, so it's actually a great example. What I would do is I would play like a $55 matchup, and then I would play like in the the $54 World Horse Player Tour feeder, or that's the easiest one because that's the $50 one. You could also do like a $95 World Championship of Handicapping, or a $95 Keeneland, or $95 Belmont, or whatever.
That's right. Belmont new on the site too now.
But if you could just do the 50 and the 50, right? The 54 is the $54 World Horse Player Tour is a 1 in 10, and then you have the $55 matchup, which is obviously a 1 in 2, right? So if you just play those two, I think you would be surprised how often you just kind of break even on the day. You'll win your matchup, you'll lose the thing. You win your matchup, you lose the deal. You win the matchup, you whatever. And then eventually you'll have days where you do both, one way or the other. And I think that's one way to kind of help with the bankroll situation, because if you just play head-to-heads, you're going to probably end up somewhere around between 40 and 60% on the year, and you're going to have a lot of action, but you're not going to make a ton of money. However, if you can somehow find a way to mix in some on your stronger opinion days, to mix in some abilities to win the $5,000 entries into a bigger live money contest, now you're giving yourself an opportunity to really increase and improve that bankroll without really putting yourself out there too much.
We mentioned the World Horse Player Tour Santa Anita Preakness contest. There's a rumor, unconfirmed, but a rumor that there might be a new format to win into that, debuting on DRF tournaments this weekend, that will have the ratio will be longer than is typical, but this will be a one-shot chance to win your way in. Come out, join us at Santa Anita. We've been obviously helping out the team at the World Horse Players Tour to put together this event. Going to be filming a TV pilot. All the money is added. It's going to be a great weekend in a very competitive inventory at DRFT. The qualifiers and feeders still seem to be doing great for the WHT Santa Anita Preakness event. We want to see you there. We want to see you on TV. And we want a chance to hang out. So definitely get involved on DRF tournaments, tournaments.drf.com.
Yeah, no, I think people can listen back. We have the podcast where we kind of explained and talked about it. And then there's also your article somewhere in the interwebs where people can read about the ins and outs of the tournament. And then I'm pretty sure that this week at some point the official rules will be released, where people can really dive in and read some of the ins and outs of the contest. And I think that they will be happy to kind of see some of the new changes that are going to be happening there. And then we talked about it. I don't know if we talked about it, Pete. I think you and I did privately, but I would expect that players can look to see the Breeders' Cup rules coming out in the next, I would guess, definitely probably before Friday.
Wow.
I understand. So
that's a news flash. Something for me to write about, I bet.
Yes, yeah. We got a sneak peek at them and got to give our comments. And so I can tease tease the thumbs up to there's always things that, as horse players, we want to see done, but I appreciate a lot of the adjustments they've made. I think make the contest a lot better and solve a lot of the problems we were having.
I'm reserving my opinion. It's that old Lennon McCartney dynamic. I'm a little more cynical than my friend JK. For being the final rules, and have a feeling I'll be writing something about it in the pages of DRF. I had a funny story I was going to tell. I'm going to sneak it in anyway, even if we run long. Producer Craig won't get too mad at me. So I did ATR stateside the other night. I kid you not. The guys I was working with were great. But I kid you not. It was Rich Perham and Jason Weaver, both fantastic. They both pronounced the name of a certain 2-year-old stakes race at Keeneland as Alcibiades. And it came up like multiple times, and it was all I could do to not break out into hysterics. And as a guest, I certainly wasn't going to correct them, and I don't think there were too many people from Kentucky listening. But, of course, I had to think back to my own Alcibiades mishap from long ago, and I thought listeners would appreciate that little story.
I seriously can't say it right anymore. I honestly, I'm not joking you. I was trying to say it in my head, and it took me like the entire length of your story to get it where it would come out right. I muted, and I was like, Alsa. It's hard. You ruined it.
I ruined it for everybody, but that was amazing. It was so fun being on there. I did want to talk for half a second about the Turfway races, but I think we're out of time for that. Maybe we'll loop back to that. We'll be back here later in the week, it seems like. So
we don't want to talk about Bobby's kitten's brother. I'm just kidding.
You can real quick.
No, it was interesting. It was a very interesting thing when I saw the horse move from Chad to Maker, and I would imagine this horse will run a mile and 5/16 at some point in the near future and win for fun. No, I'm just joking. I don't really know about that, but no, it was good to see. I used him in the contest. It was more of a love for Bobby than anything else. And
you're talking about Camelot. Give people
Camelot
the name of the
Kitten.
horse.
Yeah, Camelot Kitten. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Nice priced winner and surprisingly good price. Made me look smart to the British people. So that's always good. Did they look at you funny when you said, and let's talk about the Jeff Ruby stake? Oh no, we were actually off the air before the feature ran, so I did not have to give my opinion that puns are basically a type of mental illness, which I think they are. Granted, one that I do indulge in from time to time, but I don't know. Sometimes I don't want to say anything too mean, but sometimes I think the marketing people can do a little better. That's all. Give us a closing thought. I don't want to end on that.
Why did they just call it the Jeff Ruby Stakes? Did they? I don't know. Maybe they did. Maybe I think they called it the Jeff Ruby Stakes.
No, they just said steaks, but they spelled it like the meat. That was the pun that I was referring to.
Oh, okay.
You didn't see this?
I just saw Garrett Schieber tweet something about it, or maybe it wasn't Garrett. Maybe it was the POTUS capper. But somebody said something about it being the stakes, and I thought they actually wrote that in the.
No. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. All right, I guess we are closing on that. Thank you, Jonathan Kitchen, especially for getting up early. Producer Craig as well for making these accommodations for my travel plans. Thanks to the Wi-Fi at the Staybridge Inn in Vauxhall. Seems like it actually held out for us despite very meager statistics at the beginning of the broadcast. Thank you to Willie Nile, provides our theme song. More of his music, willienile.com. Uncle Travis Stone with the voiceover. Thanks most of all to all of you for tuning in and listening, especially those of you who submitted questions. We will be back probably Friday, maybe Thursday. We'll figure that out later, but we will be back later this week. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatel. Until then, may you win all your photos.